thank you for agreeing to do this with me.
My pleasure.
Um, so, what roles do you play at Stony Brook?
So I am a lecturer in the music department, and I conduct the two choirs, Camerata Singers, which is an auditioned choir, and Stony Brook Chorale, which is open to everybody. And I also am an officer in our union and an academic delegate. And I have taught in the undergraduate colleges. I've taught a 102 class on civic engagement, and I've also taught Intro to Stony Brook's, the 101 course.
So, did you always know that these were the paths that you wanted to take with your career?
No. So I was a music ed major as an undergrad, and that I was fairly certain I wanted to do. The civic engagement piece and the union stuff, I've always been a union member, but I really felt like it was important that I step up, particularly after union rights came under attack in the Supreme Court Janus decision. And especially as a non-tenure track employee, I felt like it was important that that voice be heard in our union. And the civic engagement piece, I think, is something that has really grown in the last few years. I've always been pretty informed, but gotten more involved. And that became something that I got very excited to talk about and teach and work with young people on.
So, what are some of the moments that you most look forward to in your work, either in your union duties or with your choirs?
Wednesday night, like I miss our camerata rehearsals so much. I think that, forming that circle, where we'd pull our chairs down and do our thing. I cannot wait to do that again. I desperately miss it. And I will also say that with chorale, there's always a moment about 4 or 5 weeks into the semester where it just gels. Because I think in the beginning, especially if you've never sung in a choir before, you're just getting used to how it works. And if you haven't sung in years, which is a lot of times people are coming into that space not having made music in a while in that type of setting or ever done it at all. And that moment where, we've just established routine and what our sound is and how we work and how to work through a score. And when you can just feel it, it's not something I can put my finger on, but I think all of us who are musicians know it. When everybody just is in it and that moment hits, it's really one of the most rewarding things as an educator. And it always happens around the same time in the semester. I come home and my husband's like, "Oh, you had that rehearsal. I see it." He's like, "I see it in your face." So those are the things I really, really miss the most. And I'd say that right now, one of the things that really strikes me is that I have not gotten with my undergraduate stuff. I didn't get to meet any of those freshmen in person that I taught for a semester. I taught two sections of 101 last semester. And at least with my 102 last semester, though we went online, I got to see them in person and know who they are. But not ever having the opportunity to meet those kids in person really struck me after the class was done. And I felt like a real loss about that. And I hope to be able to be, I can't wait to be back and meet those kids face to face.
Luckily, they're freshmen, so you'll probably have the opportunity to do that, which is nice.
Yeah.
So, at the time of recording this, it's Women's History Month. What challenges do women experience in the classical music sphere, if you think there are any, and have you experienced any yourself?
I think that we experience them everywhere. So, of course, we're going to experience them in classical music too. I think that some of it is getting your music performed and heard if you're a composer. I think that when we did a concert of women's music, all just female composers and poets back, I think it was 2018, fall 2018 in Chorale. And I brought up some contemporary composers into that concert. And these are people who are pretty prolific and do great work. And everyone in my choir had heard of Eric Whitacre, but nobody had heard of these composers. And I said, well, here's our disparity. And this is why doing these types of programs are so important. So I think that that exists. And certainly, if you look at academia in general, women are underrepresented in all fields. And I think that, for myself, being very honest, right at the time where I was thinking it's time to get a doctorate was also the time that I was like, oh, my biological clock is ticking. And I think that a lot of women face those choices of, do I have kids? Or if I do, when do I have kids? And how does that fit with tenure? And I think that it makes the path certainly more challenging. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I just think that it is a more challenging path for women. There's the throat clearing he talked about. So
So you had mentioned how you did a all women's composers concert. So do you want to speak a bit more on how you include more diverse composers into your repertoire and why you think it's important? I mean, you kind of spoke to that, but
yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the great things about social media is you make these connections with people. And I know when I was starting to do this research of how do I do a better job, because I do think that a lot of times I used to think about diversity as variety as opposed to diversity. And when I realized that I was missing a piece of this, that it wasn't just about performing music from around the world, it was performing a variety of perspectives. And I started to just ask my friends, who are in academia or who are composers, like, who should I be listening to? Who am I missing right now? And I knew some of them, but there were people I was missing. And I started to go down the rabbit hole. And again, that's where social media and YouTube and things are great because I just got introduced to so many composers, both from women, composers of color, composers from the LGBTQ plus community. And now I think the other great part is that, so many of them, particularly as young composers, contemporary composers, are so accessible. You can just write and say, hey, can I just have, just one copy to take a look at and see if this works for my choir? And you build relationships with them. And I've had back and forth with so many of them and then gotten to work on their music. And it's really cool. So I think that aside from programming really good music that allows us to have some courageous conversations in class, I've also made some really incredible friends. So it's pretty cool.
so how have you adapted to creating music during the time of the pandemic?
So virtual choir, which, I think it's you can have a lovely end product. And I think that we can still build relationships in this setting. But I will tell you the weirdest thing is not knowing what anything sounds like until you get it back from an editor. It is the polar opposite of our experience of experiencing sound in real time coming at you and saying, "Oh, I really love that," or "Let's fix it like this." Teaching choir on, with everybody on mute is it's such an upside down experience. And I know that it's the right decision right now in this moment as far as safety, but it's a big adjustment to not know what the final product sounds like. It's just the opposite of everything I've known and what we do as musicians. The part that has been really kind of cool is my daughter, who is 11, is doing vocal NISMA for the first time. And it's a virtual NISMA and they have to upload it. But I'm prepping her. And I'm definitely getting way too emotional every time I hear sound come back at me in real time. Like I look at her, I'm like, oh, and she's like, what? What, mom? But that's been a really beautiful kind of like lifeline right now for me. These past couple of months is getting to do that with her, both as a parent and as a musician.
I'm sure it's very nice to be able to warm someone up and actually hear them in sound space.
Yeah, like it's wild. And we had this moment where I think if you approach this phrase like this is the note you want to focus on, where, like you're going to flip a little bit and you're in your passaggio and like, and I watched her process it and be like, oh, that feels so much better. And she was excited, but I was just so excited to hear something come back at me in real time that worked.
Being in your choir, I can completely understand why that would be so rewarding because I was thinking about it too. I was like, I wonder how strange it is to sit at a keyboard and warm people up and see all the mouths moving, but have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I just look at everyone's mouths and I'm like, okay, everyone's singing the same vowel. I guess we're good. Like it's so weird.
So I guess this is a little more of a hypothetical question. What is something that you would tell your younger self starting out on this career path that you wish you had known before you had started it, or something that you had learned that you never thought you would learn?
that relationships are equally as important as being competent. And I think that that's something I wish I had understood because I was so focused on, is my conducting gesture exactly right? Did I pick the perfect piece of music? Is my classroom management like I was such a perfectionist and I was focused on what I was doing. And I think that's part of being a new teacher, but realizing that the people in front of you just want to see a human being who cares about them and that you're much more effective at delivering what you want to deliver and if you were able to build relationships.
Those were all of the questions that I had prepared, but did you have anything else that you wanted to add for the interview or anything you wanted to tell to maybe your choir or any other musicians who are maybe struggling right now with the lack of music?
Yeah, I would say first of all, for everyone in choir, I miss you so much, and I can't wait to see you not through rectangles. And we will get there. We will get there, and it may not look perfect in September, but we will find a way. I think that this is. I think the big thing is this is temporary, and to find joy if you can in other areas, but if you can in these little areas, I mean, like I think that, like I said, those moments with my daughter, it they mean so much more now and I'm so much more appreciative of them. And I keep trying to find like little creative projects that for our treble choir project, I just decided, okay, I'm going to figure out this scrolling screen and sing along with it. And and it just felt like it's not the music making I would typically make, but it forced me to, not be on mute or just do things differently. And I think that there's something to be learned from this time period as musicians. Like, where can we be more efficient? And there is some of this stuff that will come back into the classroom with me. As somebody who didn't use a lot of technology, I think that I realize now it has a place even in a traditional setting. And I don't know that I'll ever do a virtual choir again when we come out of this, but I do think that I will be a better educator for having to have to adapt. And I think it's easy to get comfortable, and this forced me to deal with discomfort, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think there's an opportunity for growth there. That said, y'all better get vaccinated so we can get back in.
Thank you so much for talking with me today, Shoshana.